Welcome to Comics on a Pyre, a channel to have a meaningful conversation over movies, life, books, and shows, and maybe just a spot to spend time BSing over comics. If you like your entertainment with a bit of substance, then you, my vagabond friend, have come to the right tavern. Tether your horse by the post and come right on in and warm yourself by the fire. Tap that subscribe button, and for the next few minutes, my fellow George Carlin reprobate, lend me your ear. In the fabric we have come to know as time and space, multiverses exist at the same time, always playing out a sequence of events independent and unaware of each other's existence. Because they are properly segregated and quarantined into their own partitions, they are unaffected by the actions of each other's consequences. But there are times when some beings or elements, whether cognizant or not, threaten to cross the boundaries, effectively altering the outcomes of other universes, adversely affecting their story. And this is where I come in. I am Tempest Fortunaut. I am a race of cosmic beings tasked with preventing intrusions from one universe into another, particularly the dark universe. For this is a universe that is formed from man's most terrible side, the one that is left unchecked will most certainly destroy him. It is spawned by his fear and every bad decision that he has ever made, and in the end will always resulting in the same thing, his own self-destruction. So when any element of the dark verse seeps into neighboring verses, I must be there to temper it back. But lately, it has seemed to grow at an alarming rate, propagating, infecting all that it comes in contact with at an unchecked rate, causing me much consternation. The power of the light has waned as the darkness waxes, for the cause of the darkness to spread is because of one being's death, and of another being's poor actions because of it. Stricken by so much grief, Lois Lane closed herself off to all other outlets of grieving, choosing strictly to blame all those around her, whether hero or villain, for the death she herself was impotent to stop. But what stokes the flames of her anger even more is how they grandstand at his death, always wanting to be seen, soaking up the glory. But when in his death, when Superman needed them the most, they were nowhere to be found. But she was there, at his side. But now, when the threat has been neutralized because of her lover's sacrifice, the so-called heroes take center stage, and they cast her aside out of the limelight, trying to marginalize her significance. But it does not mitigate her hurt. Like a stone in her heart, she mourns Superman's death. It is the pain that gnaws at her, unbearable, demanding a release, and she finds it in the most unlikeliness of places. Now, endowed with her lover's power, she decides to make a change. But her actions are not spawned out of love and compassion like her lover, but it is spurned from anger, hate, and rage. Instead of honoring Superman's death, she shames his memory by perverting her power, by committing acts of violence he never would have condoned, therefore becoming the absolute antithesis of what he stood for. She let her grief consume her, effectively becoming something Clark and she no longer know. And in the end, it therefore destroys everything that she has ever loved, verily bringing to life the old saying, he who fights with monsters should be careful, lest thereby becoming a monster. And if thou gaze long into the abyss will also gaze back into thee. Welcome, my comic heads, to another installment of Comics on the Pyre. As you no doubtly have guessed it by now, I will be going over DC's Tales from the Dark Multiverse, the death of Superman. This is basically a Marvel's What If comic mixed in with some darker themes, exploring the darker side of the human conscious. This is an absolute must-read for all Superman fans, as it explores some important questions regarding the Man of Steel. In the beginning, when Lois first gets her powers from the Eradicator, her anger is focused on humanity, stating it didn't deserve him, and that she will create a world with her newfound powers that is worthy of him. But as time goes by and she sees what Superman was truly capable of, she realizes something pretty disturbing about her old lover. She states that with all his power, he could have done more, but by his inactions, he allowed evil to grow, thereby questioning the motives of his actions. Was she implying that Superman kept evildoers alive? Because if he did, the world will always need him, depend upon him, feeding a masqueraded ego? Kinda sick once you think about it. Also, I believe that Lois, in her grief, caused the death of Superman the second time around. If she had never taken the Kryptonian life matrix from the Eradicator and found another vessel to store it in, if Superman returns, he would have been at full power when she fought Cyborg Superman, and therefore had the power to survive the blast that killed him the second time around. But that is just my hypothesis. By interfering with the cycle of life, she manifested her greatest fear. Well, that's it for now. By all means, if you have read this awesome comic, write down in the comments below section your thoughts about this issue. In the meanwhile, visit my comic YouTube channel, Comics on the Pyre, for other videos like this one. Tap on that bell icon before you go. And oh yes, as always, until next time, keep reading, my friends.